Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to the witnesses. General Leslie, how are we doing? We know at the macro level how we're doing on recruiting and retention. How are we doing with our pay and benefits for soldiers? So are we taking a hard look at that as part of our increase in spend?
Yes, we should be. They just got a recent pay raise, which was modest, but when you consider the stress that they've had to go through, especially those stalwarts which have stuck it out over the last 5 or 6 years, the middle managers, the supervisors, the sergeant majors, the warrant officers, the captains, and the list goes on. So a pay raise would certainly do wonders, especially with the cost of living increases that have happened elsewhere, but a significant one. Yes, it's long overdue.
And particularly with from the communities where we're trying to recruit from, myself in Toronto, it's a very expensive place to live. And on the reserve side, getting those soldiers out has become increasingly difficult given the lack of incentive from a salary standpoint. So I wanted to ask you about the conflict in the Middle East, the war in the Ukraine, and the general hostilities globally. How concerning is it for you, with our lack of readiness in our armed forces, to be able to participate and contribute to these global conflicts?
So Canada, as was articulated earlier, is roughly within the top 10 or 12 defense spenders, according to the way we counted. But as I think it's been quite clear through my testimony and that of others, that our output is not commensurate with the amount of money that we spend. So the first issue is to try and figure out what we have to do, what we're willing to spend to get it done, and how quickly can we get it done. And suddenly we're faced with 3 demanding scenarios, one in the Indo-Pacific with China and its expansionist tendencies. The second one is the unfolding tragedies and continuing tragedies in the Middle East, egged on by Iran and Russia. And of course, the looming specter of the potential of further vast amounts of bloodshed in Ukraine, depending on what happens over the next couple of months with senior decision makers elsewhere. Is Canada prepared to fill some of the holes that could result from a more centralist view of the United States and how much they're willing to contribute to the defense of others? And we better be able to step up to the plate.
About the risk in the Arctic, you mentioned earlier that sovereignty is about being seen. Maybe there's an economic price that we're going to have to pay should we want this defended by one of our allies. To the extent that we're not in the Arctic, can we really claim that sovereignty there for outsourcing that to the United States?
Well, it's an excellent point, sir. In 2007, Russia and China have both been engaged since 2007 in a court case before the United Nations in which they do not recognize a significant portion of Canada's claims to the Arctic seabed. So if they don't recognize it, then they could challenge us just by having their exploration vessels show up in our waters. We have no permanently deployed naval forces to challenge them. So that in itself is a huge risk. By the way, they've recently formed an entente between Russia and China on Arctic exploitation, and China's articulated its vision for including an Arctic passage in its road and belt.
Do we have a strategy to counter that?
Does Canada?